I want to talk about these images right here. Many people call these some of the darkest chapters in American immigration policies. These are from 2017 and 2018. Thousands of families who illegally crossed the Texas-Mexico border were separated. Children younger than 18 were placed under the custody of Department of Health and Human Services while their parents were prosecuted by American attorneys in federal court. After this week, the federal government will no longer be allowed to separate migrant families if a California judge approves it. There are lots of questions regarding this settlement, so we want to take time this morning to dive into several key points. Senior staff attorney with ACLU's Immigrants' Rights Project, Anand Balakrishnan, joins us this morning. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. The first point I want to bring up is the settlement reached between the Biden administration and the American Civil Liberties Union allows those affected by the separations to apply for parole and then a work permit in the U.S. for up to 8 years. What does this look like?
Well, just one clarification. The settlement agreement does provide a pathway to reunification for the families who are separated. As part of that, the agreement that we reached is that families would be allowed initial 3-year parole if they are eligible and qualified and go through the parole procedures, along with a work authorization for that period of time and the options to renew at that end of the 3 years. And the reason for that is because many of these families were separated from each other. In many instances, parents were deported without their children and needed to come back to the United States to see their children and be with them after having spent years away.
What does this do to the mental health of these families? Do they have opportunities to seek therapy, to seek counseling if needed?
Absolutely. An important part of the settlement is that mental health services will be provided to the families who are impacted by the separation policies. And the reason this is so important is because, many doctors, pediatricians, have seen these families both, while they were separated and even after they were reunified. And these are children who were as young as 6 months old who were taken away from their parents. And what the doctors have seen is, of course, the period of separation was extremely traumatic, will have long-lasting effects on their mental health. But even after the families are reunified, there's still a lot of trauma that the parents and the children together have to deal with. Children have still been unable to sleep or even sort of be able to manage day-to-day activities even after their reunification. And so the mental health piece and the treatment is an integral part of the settlement and exceedingly important to redress the harms that these families have experienced.
Yeah, absolutely. As we mentioned, this has not yet been approved by a judge. Families impacted by this, are they worried? Are they concerned that this could be rejected?
We're hopeful that it will be. This is, we've worked for a very long time negotiating with the government over this. This represents a tremendous amount of work by both ourselves and the United States government and innumerable, organizations and advocates across the country who've been working with these families. And I think and hope that the judge will recognize the work and that we've all put into sort of reaching a fair and equitable settlement of the claims that these families had.
The thousands of children we saw impacted by this, who were separated from their families back in 2017, 2018. Do we know where they are today? Do we know how they're doing?
We know where many of them are. There are a number who we are still attempting to locate because, as you know, one of the problems with the separation policy, one of the many problems, was that the families were separated. They weren't able to communicate with each other while they were in detention. And oftentimes they were never able to communicate with a lawyer. And so we're still actively searching for several families. And in the hopes of identifying them, locating them, and reunifying them. However, there are thousands others that we have been able to locate and we have been able to work to reunify. Those families are, of course, very grateful for the ability to reunify and are hopeful that they will be able to get the other benefits of the settlement that we've discussed. They're still dealing with a lot now, and they will still have to deal with a lot in the future because of what they've been through.
Speaking of the future, ensuring the past does not repeat itself, is there anything being implemented that can assure that this will not happen again in the future?
Absolutely. And I think that's an important part of the sort of agreement that we reached with the government is that, if the settlement agreement, if it's accepted and ordered by the court, would have an 8-year term. And during that period of time, the government will commit not to repeat the separation policy that has been so roundly condemned and will eliminate sort of an automatic separation of families, limit the ways in which they can be separated, and work to keep them together through the immigration process.
Okay, Mr. Bala-Christian with ACLU's Immigrants' Rights Project. Thank you so much for your time this morning. We do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. As the crisis at our southern border progresses, you can count on us to keep you informed. When you head on over to our website, clicktohouston.com, you will find our extensive coverage on the most recent lawsuits impacting and affecting our border.